Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatyaresha Tarine Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Today we're reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the King of Books, 7th Canto, Chapter 6, text number 16. I applaud all of you, dear devotees, who are even out of bed this morning to hear Srimad Bhagavatam class, because it is so cold. And I'm a bit frugal with the old heater, so if you see me shivering. 7th Canto, Chapter 6, Prahlad instructs his demoniac schoolmates, text number 16. Vidvan apitam danujaha katumbam pushnan svalokaya nakalpate vain yasviya parakya vibinna bhavas tama prapadyeta yata vimudaha. Vidvan apitam danuja kutumbam pushnan svalokaya nakalpate vain yasviya parakya vibinna bhavas tama prapadyeta yata vimudaha. Vidvan apitam danuja kutumbam pushnan svalokaya nakalpate vai yasviya parakya vibinna bhavas tama prapadyeta yata vimudaha. Would anyone like to recite the verse?
Vidvan apitam danuja kutumbam pushnan svalokaya nakalpate vai Yasriya parakya vibina bhavas tama praparyeta yata vimuraha.
Gita Prabhu. All right, the word for word translation says, oh, go ahead, Prabhu.
Yasvi parakya vibhina bhava samapapadeta yata vimuda.
Thank you, Prabhu. Word for word translation says, Vidvan, knowing. The inconvenience of material existence, especially in household life. That is the knowledge that one possesses. Vidvan. Api, although, itam, thus, danujaha, O sons of demons. Kutumbam, the family members or extended family members, like one's community, society, nation, or union of nations. Pushnan, providing with all the necessities of life. Svalokaya, in understanding himself. Not, kalpate, capable. Vai, indeed. Yaha, he who. Sviya, my own. Parakya, belonging to others. Vibina, separate. Bhavaha, having a conception of life. Tamaha, nothing but darkness. Prapadyeta, enters. Yata, just as. Vimudaha, a person without education, or one who is like an animal. Interesting, the verse begins with vidvan, one who possesses knowledge, and ends with vimudha, one who is very foolish. So some comparison is going on here. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. This is Prahlad, of course, speaking to his school friends at the demon school. Being born in a family of demons, technically. Prahlad grows up with them, he's in school with them, they learn demoniac arts, mostly politics, how to control others, how to dominate, how to exploit. But of course, Prahlad's nature is very different. So the context is very interesting. His instructions, his school friends, basically telling them the opposite of what they'd learned from their teachers in school. The very opposite. But that was his courage in Krishna consciousness. We should try to do the same. So Prahlad is saying, "Oh, my friends, sons of demons, in this material world, even those who are apparently advanced in education have the propensity to consider, this is mine, and that is for others. Thus, they are always engaged in providing the necessities of life to their families in a limited conception of family life, just like uneducated cats and dogs. They are unable to take to spiritual knowledge. Instead, they are bewildered and overcome by ignorance." Purport. By His Divine Grace. Srila Prabhupada. In human society, there are attempts to educate the human being. But for animal society, there is no such system, nor are animals able to be educated. Therefore, animals and unintelligent men are called vimudha, or ignorant, bewildered, whereas an educated person is called vidvan. The real vidvan is one who tries to understand his own position within this material world. For example, when Sanatana Goswami submitted to the lotus feet of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, his first question was, "Ke ahami? Kene amaya jare tapatraya?" In other words, he wanted to know his constitutional position and why he was suffering from the threefold miseries of material existence. This is the process of education. If one does not ask, "Who am I? What is the goal of my life?" but instead follows the same animal propensities as cats and dogs, what is the use of his education? As discussed in the previous verse, a living being is entrapped by his fruitive activities, exactly like a silkworm trapped by its own cocoon. Foolish persons are generally encaged by their fruitive actions, karma, because of a strong desire to enjoy this material world. Such attracted persons become involved in society, community, and nation, and waste their time, not having profited from having obtained human forms. Especially in this age, Kali Yuga, great leaders, politicians, philosophers, and scientists are all engaged in foolish activities, thinking this is mine and this is yours. The scientists invent nuclear weapons and collaborate with the big leaders to protect the interests of their own nation or society. In this verse, however, it is clearly stated that despite their so-called advanced knowledge, they actually have the same mentality as cats and dogs. As cats, dogs, and other animals, not knowing their true interests in life, become increasingly involved in ignorance, the so-called educated person who does not know his own self-interest or the true goal of life becomes increasingly involved in materialism. Therefore, Prahlad Maharaj advises everyone to follow the principles of Varnashrama Dharma. Specifically, at a certain point, one must give up family life and take to the renounced order of life to cultivate spiritual knowledge and thus become liberated. This is further discussed in the following verses. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Jnanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Tadati Swaparantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shayuta Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Param Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitam Scha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sutta Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cham Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Jai. So by the grace of Srila Prabhupada, we get to hear of this incredible conversation that Prahlad is having with his school friends, giving them the real education, in complete contrast to what they're learning from their teachers, Sandanamarka, as dictated by the state authority, who happens to be Prahlad's father, Hiranyakashipu. Imagine this context, wherein Prahlad is telling his friends, young boys really, Dhunaja, what was it? Dhanuja, the sons of demons. Imagine this context. We're saying, what is a real learned person, Vidvan? We've learned so much from Sandanamarka about how to exploit others, about how to manipulate, how the weak must be controlled by the strong, and that this is the rule of life. Sounds like one very popular philosophy, Darwinism, social Darwinism. And yet, even in the same context, in this setting, Prahlad is telling his school friends, now this is bewilderment. This is like cats and dogs. This is the philosophy of cats and dogs. The difference is that the cats and dogs don't need to go to school to learn this. And that indicates something very important, that it is not the spiritual nature. It is not natural to dominate and to exploit and to control and to manipulate others. It's not natural. It's something that has to be learned. It's something that has to be contrived, even enforced. What is natural, in the human form especially, is to inquire. What is the absolute truth? To inquire about real knowledge. As Prabhupada says in this purport, the real Vidvan is one who tries to understand his own position within this material world. Like Sanatana Goswami, who met Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Sanatana Goswami is already very educated, but he met Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and said, Keami, who am I? Keni amaya jare tapatraya. What is the goal of my life? So the animals do not do this, and the two-legged animals, known as humans, and especially those who have subscribed to the metaphysical ideology of Darwinism, they don't inquire, thinking there is only dominance over some other creature, only dominance over the resources of material nature. That's all there is. Basically, the curriculum of Sandanamarka. So this story is still very relevant. We shouldn't think that just because it was, I don't even know how long ago. Was this in the Satyuga or the Treta Yuga? I can't even remember. And in different parts of this universe, just because it was a long time ago and very far away, doesn't mean that it's irrelevant. There's still the same thing going on, where a certain section of society thinks real knowledge is how to dominate others, how to exploit, how to manipulate, how to control. That's what should be learned. We should learn that, study it, and enforce it. And don't waste any time with asking about who you are. It's not very good for productivity. It will slow down production. Don't ask. Don't inquire about the absolute truth, the tato brahmajigyasa, that might affect our quarterly profits. Which is why, as I've said so many times in these in Bhagavatam classes, since we're in the context of a school setting, which is why that's no longer part of education. Humanities, philosophy, literature. I don't know if schools are even doing literature anymore. What's the point? There's only economic development. There's only productivity. There's only developing some new technology, to make a whole lot of money for somebody who was not involved in its development in the slightest. And so Chanda Namarka's program, the Hiranyakashipu program, is going well in the world today. But this is unnatural, which is why it needs to be enforced, which is why it needs to be mandated by the state with a particular curriculum. You must learn this. You must learn engineering. You must learn chemistry. You must learn whatever it takes to dominate, to develop some new technology which is going to give us the upper hand, the advantage over others. That's all. As we know, of course, most technological advancements happen during wartime for weapons manufacturing, and if there's a little bit of consumer value from that, then great. But let's not be bewildered, let's not be an illusion here. The Cold War never ended. That's where all the production started. That's where the modern education system sort of coalesced with its focus on STEM, and it hasn't really ended. And that's evidenced by even right here at Penn State, where some estimate that maybe 50%, 60% of all research and development is ultimately for weapon systems. I meet so many people like this, that the research they're doing on campus and some of the private groups that are in the area, like ARL, Raytheon. I just met this other guy who's doing something similar. He was working on this new type of batteries that are working like especially well in cold weather. That's been one of the problems with battery chemistry. In cold weather, they have less energy output. So his company is right here in State College. He's working on these batteries, and they wanted to make, consumer products. But then, owing to economic necessity, the company, he was telling me that our company previously had a motto, like a slogan: we will not work on weapons. We're all about changing the world for the betterment of the world. He was saying to me, our company, I joined this company because they had this motto about making products that'll benefit the world. But then, some economic things changed, and there's less funding for something like that, and there was funding from the government to continue producing these batteries for drones, weapons drones, which, as many of you probably know, that's how modern warfare is happening over in Ukraine. A lot of drone war. So he said now our company is just like, they just erased that from their slogan, from their motto. And so just working. So they have some big contract, making a ton of money working on some weapon systems. So this is the real world. I mean, this is what's actually going on. So much of Penn State's research and development is explicitly for that. The local private groups explicitly for that. The Chandanamarkya program, the Hiranyakashipu program, cannot be interrupted by asking, Keami, Kena Amaya Jare Tapatraya. Who am I and what is the goal of my life? If we start asking these questions, then we might not produce as much for our Lord's. And I don't mean our Lord's Sri Shirada Damodar. I'm talking about our Lords who control all of the resources and decide what is the goal of life. What is the goal of human society in 2026? So in contrast to that, Srila Prabhupada is giving us some hints. What is the real Vidvan? One who possesses knowledge. Vidya, or Veda, of course, meaning knowledge, and Van, to possess. What is someone who really possesses knowledge? They're not just thinking, this is mine, this is yours. We should fight over limited resources. They're not just thinking in this way. Vidvan, as expressed by Srila Prabhupada, is inquiring, who am I? What is the goal of life? Actually, Vidvan comes up many, many times in our literature. It's a popular term used to express gratitude for someone who is giving knowledge. You see it all over Srimad Bhagavatam and Chaitanya Charitamrita. There's, of course, many exchanges between student and teacher, and frequently those in the position of student will refer to their teacher as Vidvan. It's a great way to express some appreciation for the knowledge that someone gives you. Oh, Vidvan, as a pronoun. These are the pronouns we should be concerned with. Vidvan, or you who possess knowledge. By expressing that appreciation, one is in a good position to receive knowledge, and it encourages someone who's giving knowledge. So, Vidvan, what is someone who's really in knowledge? Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, one of my favorite verses, in chapter 3, text 25, I don't know, Sakta karmanya vidvamkso, avidvamkso, yatha kurvanti bharata. Sakta karmanya vidvamkso, yatha kurvanti bharata, kuryad vidvams tata saktas, chikir shur loka sangram. Krishna says that that the avidvan, the person who's not possessing knowledge, they are sakta karmanya. Sakta karmani, they're very attached to all sorts of fruitive activities, very concerned with the outcome of everything that they do, as characterized by their constant anxiety, very concerned with the outcome of every single action, and even very concerned with the actions of other people. That's why they're poring over the news, very addicted to watching the different types of news abuse. I hope none of the devotees here are indulging in that particular way, but I've seen when I visit my mother, she's always got the television on, and it's always blasting you with this extremism and alarmism, very concerned with the outcome of their activities and of other people's activities. Who's going to win this next election? Who's getting control in this particular sphere? Who is expressing power over the next person? Just very, very concerned. Sakta karmanya vidvamksa. So this is avidvan, someone who's not possessing knowledge, very concerned with the outcome of activities. Yatha kurvanti bharata. They're always engaged in this way. Kuryad vidvams tata saktas chikir short loka sangram. But someone who is vidvan, Krishna says, is someone who acts as they are obligated, but without any attachment. And they do this just to guide people in general. This is really interesting. Kuryad vidvams tata saktas. Kuryad has a similar root to karma, but it just means one's obligational activities. We have certain obligation in roles in this world, as a husband or wife, as a mother or father, as a son or daughter, as an employee or employer. We have so many different obligations, and one can act according to those obligations, kuryad, but without any attachment to the outcome. The avidvam is sakta akarmani. This just very concerned with the outcome of every single activity. Is it going to go my way? Biting their nails on the edge of their seat. Are all of my expectations going to be fulfilled? Will all the results be in my favor? They can't sleep at night because of this. And if it's not, some of them off themselves. It's terrible. But imagine the person who's vidvan, possessing a knowledge. And what is that knowledge? We'll get to. But they possess such knowledge whereby they can do similar activities, kuryat, out of obligation, recognizing a duty, but without any attachment. And they do this to lead people in general. Chikir shor loka sangraham. To set an example, to set a precedent, how one should actually act, just like Prahlad does. Just like Srila Prabhupada. In fact, in a lecture on this verse of Bhagavad Gita, the number of which I can't remember, Sakta Karmanya Vidvamkso, Srila Prabhupada said he gave himself as an example, which he doesn't do very often. Prabhupada, being modest, it's one of the symptoms of pure devotion. Hri means modesty, one of the Vaishnava qualities, And yet he gives himself as an example of Kuryad Vidvams Tata Saktas Chikirashor Loka Sangram. He said, just see my own example. He said that I'm very satisfied. I could just sit down anywhere and be happy with 1 or 2 chapatis every day and just chant Hare Krishna. But he said, I'm going all over the world, preaching Krishna consciousness, creating farms. He specifically mentioned a farm, showing people how to, reminding them how to live on the land, have a simple life, higher thinking, taking care of the cows and the land. He said, why am I going through all this effort, managing all these accounts? He said, why? Just to show people in general how they can live. But Prabhupada, he hinted at his own Uttama Adhikari nature, because the Uttama Adhikari, one of the symptoms is that they see everybody as more advanced than them, and they have no need for anything else. But Prabhupada actually, being Uttama Adhikari, acts on the platform of Madhyama Adhikari to benefit so many others, to give others Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada is hinting at his own nature, actually, in this one lecture he gave on this verse from Bhagavad Gita. Chikirshor loka sangraham, just to guide others in general, to set an example, to set a standard, a precedent of how one should really live as vidvan. Therefore, he manages institutions, guides people in agriculture. Srila Prabhupada is doing this. Even in health, giving so much health advice to so many devotees. So Prabhupada is setting an example for us. What is someone who's really possessing knowledge? And what is that knowledge that they possess so that they can act according to obligation but without any attachment? That's knowledge that Krishna is ultimately the proprietor of everything. Not, as Prahlad Maharaj is saying here, thinking this is mine and this is yours. That's avidvan. That's ignorance. But real knowledge is seeing Krishna as the proprietor of everything. Krishna as the awarder of certain outcome. Seeing Krishna as the goal of every activity. The goal of every activity is not to turn a profit. Did you know? I don't know. I mean, we might have forgotten this. The goal of every activity is not just to turn some personal or collective profit, but the goal of every activity is to please Krishna. One who is vidvan, who has that knowledge, they can act in such a way. Kuryat vidvam satasaktas, without any attachment. Without any attachment to the outcome. So, this is what we learn from Prahlad Maharaj here, to become vidvan. To not be vimudha, like an animal. It's remarkable that some people actually have as a philosophy to be an animal. That's the philosophy that I was mandated to learn in public school. A little bit cultish. You have to force children to do it. That you're an animal. And that your only purpose is to dominate others. At least Shanda and Amartya and Hiranyakashipu didn't compare themselves to animals. They just recognize we just want to enjoy our senses. And by controlling, we can have more sense enjoyment. But now, the modern Kali Yuga philosophy has to have a very convoluted, extrapolated ideology, metaphysical ideology, that you're actually just an animal. So let's instead learn from Prahlad Maharaj and to become vidvan. I'll recite one more verse about the vidvan, one who possesses knowledge. So we can make sure that we're firmly fixed in that category, not vimudha. So you all know this famous verse from Srimad Bhagavatam. Narada Muni speaking to his disciple Vyasadeva. I think it's the 7th chapter, text number 6. Anartho pashamam sakshad bhakti yogamar hokshaje. Lokasya janato vidvam chakre sattvata samhitam. The material miseries of the living entity, which are superfluous to him, can be directly mitigated by the linking process of devotional service. But the mass of people do not know this. And therefore the learned Vyasadeva compiled this Vedic literature, which is in relation to the supreme truth. Vidvan. So to know the supreme truth knows that actually all the miseries of material existence are mitigated by the linking process of devotional service, by bhakti yoga. We put in so much effort to mitigate material miseries, so much effort. All the time, just trying to solve this problem and then that problem. By solving one problem, we create 2 more problems. Like some hydra. What is that mythical creature? The hydra. You cut off one head, and then there's 2 more. Or shifting the burden from one shoulder to the next. We're just always trying to mitigate the problems of material existence. Ignorant do not know. But the learned person, vidvan, knows that the linking process of devotional service mitigates all material miseries. Do we know that, devotees? Are we convinced? Have we sufficiently applied this philosophy to be convicted that yes, linking with Krishna mitigates all material miseries? Not just getting a little more money and not just having a little more control over the people around me. That does not mitigate the miseries. That increases the miseries. It is not that if your preferred political clown gets what they want, that's not going to mitigate your miseries. It is not that if the weather just cooperates with what I want, wouldn't it be nice if it were warmer? Then I'd really be happy. Then my miseries would really be mitigated. No, this is all avidvams. This is the ignorance. This is the vimuda, the bewilderment. One who is very learned, who has knowledge, they know that the linking process of devotional service mitigates all miseries. We might have a little bit of faith in this, but we need to really be convicted and apply this in all situations, in all circumstances, in all scenarios. By linking with Krishna, all of my miseries are mitigated. So this is the conviction of Vyasadeva. He's saying this very clearly. It's about Vyasadeva. So it's spoken by Sutta Goswami. I can't remember who speaks this verse. The mass of people do not know this. And so we have a responsibility to educate the mass of people as best as we can by distributing Srila Prabhupada's books, by inspiring people to chant Hare Krishna, to link up with Krishna and to mitigate their material miseries. If you've done a bit of preaching, you've seen time and time again, it does work. Those who link up with Krishna, their material miseries are mitigated. Their habitual self-destructive tendency to try to control this material world, to try to dominate this material world, becomes dissipated. They become attached to Krishna, become vidvan. So we've seen this so many times. It's always miraculous. It's always miraculous to see persons who are just so entrenched in material miseries, like a what did Prabhupada say? Like a silkworm trapped in a cocoon of its own creation. I've seen so many times people trapped in the cocoon of their own creation, bound up by their own fruitive activities, like a person drowning in a puddle, face down in a little 2-inch puddle, drowning in it. We've seen so many times how, by linking up with Krishna, by becoming knowledgeable of Krishna, by chanting the holy names of Krishna, all of their material miseries are mitigated. When you watch people go through that transformation, it's just so inspiring. Sometimes we can forget, those of us who've been practicing Krishna consciousness for a while, we're kind of in that anartha nivritti stage, which is the longer stage. It's the stage that might take a few lifetimes, right? Especially if our chanting is still a little offensive. That stage could take many lifetimes, anartha nivritti. And so we might forget, since we've been card-carrying Hare Krishnas for many, many years, we might forget how transformative the catharsis of coming in contact with Krishna and making rapid progress from material entanglement to vidvan, kuryad vidvam stata saktash, becoming free from the bondage of fruitive activity. We might forget what that was like, because now we're kind of fixed in devotional service. We kind of like found our comfort zone. Kind of walk the walk and talk the talk, and I'm doing all right in bhakti, and I might not be the greatest of devotees. Pure devotional service, it might be hypothetical anyway. I'm just kind of stuck at this level. We can forget, if we're not out there preaching to somebody, if we're not watching that transformation, we can forget just how powerful is the linking process of Krishna consciousness. We can forget just how far we've come. And so, the mass of people do not know about Krishna consciousness. We should tell them about Krishna consciousness as beneficial for them and as beneficial for us. To be reminded always of how powerful is the linking process of Krishna consciousness. To To be reminded how that transforms one from vimudha, dvipada pashu, a two-legged animal that's bewildered by fruitive activities, to vidvan, one who knows Krishna, one who knows that Krishna is the goal of all activities and is therefore freed from bondage to fruitive activities. We might kind of forget if we're not watching it happen in others. And so, it's very special to try to share Krishna consciousness with others, to help others to become vidvan, just like we were helped to become vidvan, to help others to transform in Krishna consciousness, just like we transformed by the grace of so many devotees and by the Lord. Just as Prahlad is doing for his schoolmates, in the context of demoniac, asuric education, materialistic education, in the context of that curriculum, the curriculum of control and exploitation and manipulation, domination, still right into the belly of the beast, Prahlad Maharaj preached an entirely contrary devotional philosophy, one of complete surrender to the Lord, that the Lord is the proprietor of everything, not Hiranyakashipu or whoever could beat Hiranyakashipu. This is the philosophy that Prahlad Maharaj is preaching, and in that context. And similarly, we should, with confidence, preach the philosophy of Krishna consciousness, despite the mentality of the day, the ideology of the day, which is to only make more money, only develop better weapons, only control others, and your only happiness should be when your enemies are losing. That's what especially American politics has become lately, the politics of spite. The only success you could ever hope for in this world is to see your enemies losing. Now, you're also losing, but don't worry about that. Just focus on seeing the opposing party losing, the politics of spite. So this is still happening. What the situation we're in is hardly different from Prahlad Maharaj. It's hardly different from Prahlad. So similar to Prahlad, we should preach Krishna consciousness. We should tell others to see Krishna as the reservoir of all pleasure, as the origin of all love, as the repository of all action, as the enjoyer of all sacrifices, as the controller of all domains, to give one's heart fully and wholly to Krishna. This is what we have the great fortune of doing, just like Prahlad is doing for his schoolmates. Just like Srila Prabhupada has done for us. As Prabhupada himself said, I could just sit down anywhere, be happy with 1 or 2 chapatis a day and chant Hare Krishna. But instead, he put in so much effort without attachment. That's why he was successful. He put in so much effort to give Krishna consciousness all over the world. So we should pay back. Pay it forward. Is that what they say? We should pay it forward. Grantaraj, Hare Krishna. So that's all I have to say about this particular verse. Really inspiring, really wonderful example set by Prahlad. Very relevant to us. We must become vidvan and not be vimudha. The contrast is being described in this verse here. Let's make sure that we are firmly on the side of the vidvan, one who possesses knowledge of Krishna, and help others to similarly have knowledge of Krishna. Hare Krishna. So I'll stop there because that's all I have to say, and ask if there's any devotees who might have some more comments about these particular subjects, or some retorts. You're allowed to disagree with me because I am nobody's guru. So you can just say no. But I'd like to hear why. Okay, Hare Krishna. I suppose if there's no questions or comments, then we'll finish here. Thank you, dear devotees, for tuning in. Time to get excited for some wonderful holidays that are coming up. Like on Sunday, Advaita Acharya's appearance day, and then, oh my gosh, we have so many. Bhishmashtami, Srimad Acharya's appearance day, then Ramanujacharya's disappearance day, then Lord Varaha's appearance day, then Lord Nityananda's appearance day, all next week. So many wonderful personalities to contemplate, to meditate on, to pray to, for their blessings, that we can be engaged in devotional service, to understand Krishna. So, the future is bright. the temperature might be cold, but we can be warmed in the heart by knowing that we're in the association of such wonderful and devotional personalities at all times. Hare Krishna.
What, that's it?
Yes. If you want more, you're going to have to pay me. No, I'm kidding. If you have some comments, Prabhu, please feel free. I've exhausted all of my spiritual knowledge. I'm completely spent.
We can come up with something. Tell me, how can Krishna consciousness help to mitigate the problem of increasing unemployment as AI and robotic automation begin to eliminate jobs?
Everything can be used, almost everything can be used in Krishna service for one who sees Krishna in everything. And of course, there's very, very exceptional devotees who are like that, like Srila Prabhupada. And perhaps if Srila Prabhupada were here to easily consult, he would tell us how to use some of these technologies in Krishna service, how to use AI, how to use robotics, maybe even how to use weapons. I mean, Arjuna used weapons in Krishna service. So it is entirely possible, but it requires a lot of devotion to see Krishna in everything. AI, for example, I mean, of all people, I'm actually kind of anti-AI. I've never really gotten into it. I feel like it was exaggerated, and a lot of these new technologies, they just become, just speculative investments, create big bubbles. But, some of them are good. Like I mentioned last week, that a friend of mine in New Zealand, he made this great resource which draws from everything that Srila Prabhupada has written, but without generating stuff. A lot of these AIs, like your ChatGPT, they just hallucinate, is the technical term. They can just make up stuff, which is why a lot of people like it. And that's a problem for those who wanted to use the AI to, as a resource to study Prabhupada's books, or to find some particular verse, or to summarize, what Prabhupada may have said about something. So my friend made this great one, which only draws from Prabhupada's books and from nothing else. So it doesn't look on the internet. And it doesn't generate anything. It won't create ideas. It'll just give nice summaries. And I found it really useful to help to find the verses that I'm thinking of, or something like that. So there's one way in which an AI can be used. I'm not really into the AI art, personally. I think that art is an expression of devotion. And computers don't have devotion. They only have algorithms. But, we've seen devotees are making some nice videos, like this one that Brajalila Mataji just shared in our group chat this morning, where Prabhupada, a little excerpt from Prabhupada's lecture, where he's talking about Sanatana Goswami and bringing, and how his deity was requesting some salt in the chapatis, and you can hear Prabhupada crying about, please just offer something to Krishna. But the devotees made this nice video. It's obviously generated by some AI, but, adds a little visual to the important part, which is Prabhupada's lecture excerpt. So there obviously are ways to do it. We just need to have the devotion to see how something can be used in Krishna service, how something can be offered to Krishna. I think that that's one of the symptoms of devotion, is that one always sees ways to offer something to Krishna. And Srila Prabhupada was so like that, You just see everything as this has the potential to be given to Krishna, to be used in Krishna's service. Like when he was in Toronto, Canada, and the devotees were driving him around, and they went past a very large building. And Prabhupada said to the devotees, go in there and then ask them to donate this building to the Krishna consciousness movement. Ask them to give this building to Krishna. We'll use it as a temple. And the devotees said, Prabhupada, that's the Capitol building. It's the capital of Canada. And I've seen the building because when I was there, and the devotees told me the story. It's this enormous, gorgeous temple. And our modern temple of the Vedic Planetarium, it looks very much like it. I think a lot of it is modeled after this Canadian Capitol building. But that was just Prabhupada's mood, that was his attitude. He just saw everything can be for Krishna. Just ask them to give us the capital. Robotics, I'm not an expert, but devotees could be using robotics to manufacture something that's beneficial for Krishna, beneficial for Krishna's enterprises. I mean, we use a little bit in milking our cows. That's some robotics there. It would be nice to do them all by hand, but we need a lot more staff. But still, so that's one way that it's being used in Krishna service. I'm not an expert in these things, but I think that someone who is could find a way to utilize all of these technologies in Krishna service as well. And in that way, perhaps they won't cause our inevitable destruction. Because now AI has been added to the list of possible apocalyptic scenarios, by the way. I think there's 5 that most people agree upon. There's, of course, the nuclear warhead scenario, apocalypse, a pandemic that kills everybody. There's natural catastrophe, apocalyptic scenario. There's, I can't remember the rest. Maybe conventional war was one of them. And then AI has been added. Maybe the 4th one was some extraterrestrial annihilation apocalypse scenario. Anyway, so now people see that AI is a real possibility of killing all of us. So let's start using it now for Krishna. Let's show others how to use it for Krishna. Let's show others how to use robots for Krishna. Practically everything can. If we have enough devotion, if we see that Krishna is the proprietor of everything, the enjoyer of all sacrifices, the best friend of all living entities, then we'll see a way to use all of these things for Krishna as well. And if we can't see a way to use those things for Krishna, then just don't use them. Like the Amish. The Amish set a really good example. They look at some technologies and they say, you know what, this isn't really going to help us in our devotion, so we don't need it. I think that's admirable. Anyway, that's my understanding of Krishna consciousness. You know better than me, Prabhu. But I think that there is some use for these technologies as well. But we must be
I know
very
very
Krishna
little,
conscious.
but I agree that I can tell you what Srila Prabhupada said.
What did he say?
A little bit. Automation is something that Srila Prabhupada was opposed to because it eliminates jobs. Tractors in particular, he spoke about that as far as possible, we should avoid tractors because one tractor eliminates the work of many, many men. It creates a little bit of work. Someone has to maintain the tractor, someone has to drive the tractor, but someone has to produce the parts for the tractor and so on. But the Vedic perspective on these technologies is that they are all demonic. Technology in general is regarded as demonic. We can utilize all kinds of things in Krishna's service, but they are the very nature of these technologies is ultimately counterproductive in terms of cultivating God consciousness and keeping people engaged. It eliminates work for people, which creates a problem. Srila Prabhupada felt that, people need to be engaged. They need something to do, or it becomes a problem. And they should be able to contribute somehow to society. And so he was opposed to all kinds of automation. He thought that we should not be trying to eliminate jobs, but that by living simply, we can engage limitless numbers of people, producing our own food, relying only on oxen for heavy work, and for everything else, just simply manual labor. is practical. People can provide for their subsistence and never have to be concerned about being unemployed. And, interestingly, if you look at the trajectory for job markets, taking into account AI and automation, the types of jobs that will survive are all, well, it includes all kinds of agricultural work and also all the kinds of work that people don't want to do, all the stuff that gets your hands dirty. Um, so there will still be a need for um, all kinds of construction work, plumbers, electricians, all kinds of unglamorous types of work. Mechanics of all sorts, people to repair the robots and all kinds of machinery, um, and police and first responders of all kinds. It's actually a lengthy list, but a lot of jobs are going to be eliminated within the next decade and the coming decades. So, Srila Prabhupada's solution was we should be prepared to engage people in growing food, so that the primary necessities are provided for. Everybody's got to eat. So let people work to produce food. Um, you can keep yourself occupied throughout the entire day and secure your necessities. It's good program. It's worked for millennia. Um, you know, Countless numbers of people throughout the world for kalpas have done that successfully. Everything else is an experiment. So Srila Prabhupada's advice was uh, procure some land, protect cows, grow your own food, be happy, save time, chant Hare Krishna, go back home. It's a good program. Not everybody likes it. Some people don't want to do that. There's all different kinds of people in the world, different modes of nature. So it's hard to say what will happen. Right now, farm communities, ISKCON farm projects, very hard to get people to participate. And even in secular life, non-devotees don't want to farm either. They're trying to automate everything. Nobody wants to do it. Somebody's got to produce the food somehow or other. And gradually, the quality of food is diminishing because the effort is to try to produce food without human intervention. And in order to accomplish that, you have to make a lot of compromises. So you wind up with inferior products. Srila Prabhupada's got a good program. There's something about being an empowered representative of God that results in superior judgment. Srila Prabhupada has the best ideas. I have every confidence in that. Non-devotees don't have that confidence, and so they have to struggle and somehow or other find a way. In the meantime, they're making all kinds of mistakes that make their problems worse. The solutions are worse than the problem they were meant to solve. Ugra karma. So Srila Prabhupada recommended just keep it simple. Keep it simple. Yes, Krishna is already providing everything through different agencies, through nature, Pretty much everything is there. Everything comes from the land. Sarva kama dukamahi. Everything comes from the land. You have land and cows, you have everything you need. Then the simplest of technologies will enable you to utilize that. Very simple construction, simple methods of agriculture, simple transportation. It's not an experiment. We know it works. It's been done for millions of years with great success, completely sustainable. But nobody wants to do it. We'll see what happens. Anyway,
Nobody wants to do it right now, but
yeah,
when
they may be
the
forced at some
feces
point.
hits the fan, you
Yeah.
better believe we're all going to be running to Gita Nagari saying, "Please engage me," and digging holes and planting corn or whatever.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of people who are thinking they're going to come to Gita Nagari when things get bad, but I'm afraid Gita Nagari is not going to be in a position to accommodate them. Um, there's a lot of groundwork that needs to be established, and it's not happening because we just don't have the hands to make things happen. Progress is slow, very slow. We've been spinning our wheels for several decades without any real progress in the areas that require it. So we'll see. Right now, we're moving in the direction of we're just basically a retreat center, and that's the focus. That's the central theme because we need to pay the bills, um, and it's our only revenue stream, and everything else is not really happening so much. So it's a very nice retreat center. We've done that nicely, and the dairy operation is actually going nicely. However, a lot of people don't realize it. Even though we charge a lot for milk, it actually only breaks even. It actually costs a lot to maintain the infrastructure and so on, and that's not even taking into account the massive donations that have gone into making all of that work. Ensuring that we have enough land to feed the cows, because for years we didn't. We couldn't feed the cows for years. We had to struggle to find the money to purchase hay to get the cows through the winter. It was very hard to find, and we would get poor quality hay the cows wouldn't eat. We don't have that problem anymore. Srila Prabhupada told us that if it's any problem to feed the cows, get more land. So we got more land, and the problem is solved for the time being. But we have enough to maintain a herd of right now the herd is 108 cows. If it was much larger than that, we would probably need more land. Um, we don't produce that much milk. It's enough to provide for a lot of devotees, but the number of devotees increased very much. we'd we wouldn't be able to supply the demand. And as far as other types of food, we're not producing enough to feed anybody. We have a small garden sometimes. We produce some grains, mostly for the cows, and so I don't know. I get Dave Robert. I had this conversation with Dave Robert Swami. He was saying that it may not happen until people are forced to farm for their subsistence.
I think so.
People just don't want to do it. All right, Prabhu, thank you.
Prabhu, I know you're so heavily invested, literally and figuratively, in Gita Nagari, and so naturally, as as one of the responsible persons, naturally, you want Gita Nagari to be so much better. But for what it's worth, from those of us who are on the peripheral, we see Gita Nagari as wonderful. That's why we're here. That's why we want to participate as much as we can. Gita Nagari is very inspirational for a lot of people. It's very inspirational for the people that we're preaching to as well. So I think it is successful. But of course, naturally, as the person who's very invested in it, you see so much more potential. But I would just say, I know it's inappropriate for me to speak to my senior Prabhu like this, but that we can be optimistic as well. It is wonderful and blessed by Krishna. There's no doubt that Gita Nagari is blessed by the Lord, blessed by Srila Prabhupada, and has been successful in many, many ways. Hope you'll agree, even though you always want the best for Sri Sri Radha Damodar. Hare Krishna. We should end here because there's lots to do in devotional service today. Thank you, dear devotees, for tuning in. I pray that you will stay warm and fully engaged in hearing and chanting about Krishna all day. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Nitai Gaur Premanandi Hari Hari Bol.